the art of simplification is actually quite difficult because you have to imagine that you're wearing the shoes of patients who don't have PhDs. Passionate recruiter loves placing superb talent. So it's 6 words, it's simple, it's elegant, and then the candidates, they get asked the question, why should I hire you? If a candidate presents himself or herself as flat, then they're dead. You have to tell stories, not only that touch the heart and the brain, because if you only do stats, they're numbers. They'll start to go away and fade. And if all you're doing is cutting and pasting, you're not learning anything. I've been an executive recruiter for 40 years, and yet what's at the core is talent. And my ability to find the right talent for the right company who fits what their needs are and what I call adds value. They've listened to too many podcasts about AI, I think, because I look at them and they're generic, they're boring. And here's basically what I do. I tell all my candidates, what did you do that made a difference?
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Fast Track Podcast, where we sit down with business leaders who are rethinking how business gets done. I'm your host, Billy Basuni, and today we are joined by Lynn Hazan, founder and president of Lynn Hazan and Associates, a Chicago-based executive search and consulting firm known as a relationship and storytelling recruiters. Lynn, thanks for joining us today. How's your day going?
Thank you. I'm always excited to get on a podcast.
Yeah, well, thanks again for joining. I'm excited to talk about you and your business and what you guys do. So let's start off with that. Tell us more about who you are, your background, and what Lynn Hazan Associates does.
Thank you for your question. It's a baseline for me because I like to talk about W5 plus H. Who, what, when, where, why, and then how. And I use those questions when I prep my candidates for interviewing. So it's the perfect way to start. I've been an executive recruiter for 40 years, and I just celebrated my 25th anniversary in January. And what's fascinating about being in the industry for as long as I have is I've been able to see all kinds of changes, technology, jobs, companies, needs, and yet what's at the core is talent and my ability to find the right talent for the right company who fits what their needs are and what I call adds value. And it's very important as a recruiter for me to form a relationship with my candidates that spans more than just the time I have actually interviewed with them, but way beyond that. And as a storytelling recruiter, I use my expertise as a professional storyteller to help my candidates articulate their stories. And guess what? With clients as well. Because often both clients and candidates are too close to their own profiles, that they lack the ability to talk about what makes them engaging and an exciting place for candidates to work for or at.
Mm-hmm. Like you mentioned, you've worked across so many industries, from, I think, communications all the way to healthcare to technology. What do you think has kept your firm relevant and thriving over the decades, when so many others have maybe come and gone?
It's a very good question because the ability to adapt and to change to circumstances, the needs in the marketplace, the kind of talent we hire is going to be a critical in terms of the must-have skills. I'll give you an example. We've done a lot of work hiring medical writers over the years, and there's basically 2 kind of profiles that our clients like to hire. There is the client that wants the PhD who can write about the science of medicine, targeting scientists and medical practitioners in scientific journals. You know when you hit a scientific journal, after that first paragraph, you go, what did I just read? I don't know. So those are those kinds of medical writers. The other kind of medical writer is the kind of writer, he or she might have a PhD or an MD, doesn't really matter, as long as that individual can translate the science of medicine into simpler language that can be for patients or for customers or for general marketing purposes. And the art of simplification is actually quite difficult because you have to imagine that you're wearing the shoes of patients who don't have PhDs, who don't have MDs, and you have to make the language relevant to the person you're trying to reach. And we hire those kinds of people. So it's very important to know who your customers are, what kind of talent they're looking for, what are the must haves, what are the nice to haves, to be able to review their samples and portfolios and give them what I call the top three talent. Because
Mm,
my goal as a recruiter is not just to throw resumes against the wall. That's not very efficient. Instead, I like to call it the rule of three. So hopefully within the first three resumes, one of those candidates will be a fit. What's interesting about the rule of three is that it also takes into account communication and feedback because I need to align myself with my talent according to what my client needs are. And often clients are too close to the specs they are trying to fill.
mm,
And by redefining what's a must have, what's a nice to have, what's missing from the candidates you've already seen, it allows me to tighten the specs so that I get the candidates who will be appropriate for what their needs are. And then I'll end up rewriting the job specs in language that will attract candidates. And what makes my style different from other recruiters is I ask questions. And I ask questions to draw the candidate's interest. Do you enjoy writing about the science of medicine? Or do you enjoy reinterpreting the science so you can reach your customers? And each of them has a different kind of audience you're trying to reach. And by targeting my target audience, it helps me to fine tune the eventual candidate who will respond. And it's very exciting to see that.
So it sounds like you guys have been, or you individually have been able to adapt well to really figure out a secret sauce, if you will, that works for this business. Can you share maybe one or two um, experiences or case studies with a successful client that you've helped serve?
Many times over, it's that communication that goes back and forth with the client. I'll give you an example. Actually, one of my clients a few years ago said, "Here we have a job opening for a marketing specialist CRM, a customer relationship management," and they said, "We're going to fill it on our own." Okay, no problem. And this was May, so May, June, July, August. 4 months later, they called me back and they said, "We need your help." I asked, "How many resumes did you look at?" Do you want to guess a number, Billy?
10?
You ready?
Uh,
1,330 resumes.
oh my goodness.
And what was fascinating, and that's why it's so important to communicate with your clients, as I call digging deep. Oh, wait, here's my shovel. See my shovel?
Yeah.
Digging deep. Because what's very interesting about Salesforce, for example, they require the candidate to have Salesforce experience, and that's a technology tool. I call people who do a lot of tech work heads down type people. They're very focused, they're very skilled, and they really understand their technology tool. What's different that this client wanted, not only the tech, however, they wanted social skills to be able to teach the other members of the team because
Mm,
Salesforce is an expensive technology. They had bought it, and a lot of people weren't using it because they didn't know how to use it. And the technology staff person had to have well developed tech skills and communication and relationship skills with colleagues to be able to teach. And once we found the perfect candidate, guess how many resumes we presented?
3? Just 1?
Two. Two.
2?
So we like to give clients an opportunity to choose. And actually, in many instances, we've submitted only one resume because we feel confident about what their needs are and the ability to get the exact profile of candidates who fit the specs. We found two. They made the choice, and that candidate is delivering many, many times over added value. And that's why it is so important to get to know your talent, what they're good at, how they naturally communicate. Are they the kind of people who connect well with their colleagues and then can be seen as a valuable resource within the company? And that takes getting to know my candidates because I ask them good questions. Give me a case study of how you showed your ability to relate with other people. And then that way I listen for case studies and I can use those as my way to present the candidate's credentials, to personalize it.
It almost sounds like in addition to you, providing your services to recruit and do this matchmaking. I always like to think recruiting as a matchmaking industry, right? You're filling in there's an opening and you're trying to fill that in with a person, right? You're matching the client with the candidate. But in addition to that, it really sounds like you are almost developing these candidates by asking these questions that they may have never thought of. That's like, hey, this is a skill that you should really highlight for your resume or your application. It sounds very powerful, first of all, because it it's almost like you're giving them extra points on their resume by by asking the right questions to unravel, what they have to offer as not only as a professional but really as an individual, right? Like highlighting those soft skills, which is often more often than not, it's not really those aren't what's listed on a resume, right? You're not really sure. Some people like to put in their soft skills and saying you're organizer, et cetera, but it's really more than that, right? Every individual has a lot more to offer than what they are able to do skill wise. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And actually, it's one of the ways that I add value to my client and to the candidate because candidates are too close to themselves. They lack the objectivity to be
Mm,
able to describe why should you hire me. So I do a lot of activities to help them be more comfortable when they do public speaking. For example, one of my favorites is the 6-word story. So I model it by saying passionate recruiter loves placing superb talent. So it's 6 words, it's simple, it's elegant, and then the candidates, they get asked the question, why should I hire you? I'm glad you brought that up. I'd like to tell you about my 6-word story that I find
mm,
very helpful when I'm interviewing. And then they get into the zone, they go into the flow, and they talk about their 6-word story, and then it adds an opportunity to engage with the interviewer. And there's no ums or ahs and the candidate thinking, oh, who am I? Why should you hire me? And it prompts dialogue. And then the client looks at the candidate going, you're confident of who you are and the value you bring to our organization. I like that. And then they say, could you give me a case study? And then the candidate is in the zone. And there's dialogue that goes back and forth, and there's a feeling of engagement and enthusiasm. You don't want a flat line. I actually talk a lot about flat lines with people about interviewing because if a company is flat, do you think they're hiring?
no,
No, they're not hiring. So there has to be a need for a company to hire somebody. The same way that if a candidate presents himself or herself as flat, then they're dead. If you think
right.
about an EKG, right? Do, 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 do. And if a candidate doesn't have any life to him or her, it's like, oh, do I have to work that hard to pull the words out of the candidate's mouth? Well,
Right.
you have to feel confident about who you are, the skills, your ability to connect with people, to use your technology, and to, again, be seen as someone who is going to be adding value, to be a good long-term investment for that organization, and who's
Yeah.
eager and enthusiastic and wants to keep learning and then offering value back to the company.
Amazing. I love all these things that you're really displaying for the audience and kind of like the back end or like kind of the thought process of how you go about finding and filling a candidate. You're almost kind of like helping the candidate sell themselves. You're teaching them how to sell themselves, right? And in all the right ways too, because people want to work with good people, but some good people sometimes don't know how to present themselves and bring that out of them. So I love that you do that. Let's hop
Yeah, I'm
over to the
glad you brought that up. I'm glad you
uh-huh.
brought that up. If I can add one last detail about that and we can move on. You have to tell stories, not only that touch the heart and the brain, because if you only do stats, they're numbers. They'll start to go away and fade because you can't remember a whole bunch of numbers. If you touch the heart with a story to reinforce the data, it's going to be memorable. If
Right.
it's memorable, then the interviewer will remember the story and remember the candidate.
Right, right. More often than not, people will remember a feeling as opposed to a fact,
Absolutely. Yes.
right? It's so interesting because I forget what it was, but I was talking to my partner and we were like, "Do you remember that one time we did that one thing. I can't remember right now what it was, but we couldn't remember exactly what it was, but we remember the feeling. We remember the feeling of that experience. And that was a moment that was kind of revelational to me because I was like, oh, it's so interesting how feelings and emotions are so important to an experience, and especially an experience between two people. So
Yes,
yeah, that's a great point that you bring up. I want to switch over to the client side now.
please.
How are clients changing? Especially as more companies shift to in the last 5 years, hybrid, freelance, or remote. Like, what are the changes you're seeing from a client's perspective?
What's fascinating since I've been in this business for so long is that I've lived through those changes. So when we had the recessions years back, I started doing career consulting and helping candidates with their interviews and resumes and added those new features to our firm. Then when things started changing after COVID and people were working remote, I was helping our clients redefine what kind of work-life balance, how many times you have to come into the office, and there's pros and cons to each. For example, companies that are 100% remote, what I've noticed over time is that the candidates are not as engaged as they were when they would come to the company, and they're not as visible to senior management if they want to move up or into other positions. So when they do come to the office, it's almost like a day of celebration because they haven't seen each other. On the other hand, what I've seen with some situations with other candidates is they have children, they have family members they have to take care of, and they greatly appreciate the flexibility of being able to work remotely, and the quality of their work does not suffer because they understand how to integrate themselves, their technical skills, their people skills, and be able to engage with their audiences, with their clients, etc. So the business cycles keep changing. Now we're seeing in many different cities that there's more shared office space than individual office spaces. And then some companies are giving their employees more flexibility to come into the office. And some companies have said, you know what? I don't need an office anymore. Everybody can work virtually. So it really depends on the company, what their philosophies are, how young or old they are might be as well. And also, here's what's interesting is to what degree are their staff people multi-generational or not?
Mm,
Because some people can come to the office more frequently, others are having young children. And what do you do about childcare services now? A lot of employees have really benefited from their employees being able to work from home. So there's always going to be dynamics. And what we're also seeing about very experienced staff, they have a lot to contribute to the younger and upcoming generations. And I have seen many mentor mentee programs come into existence specifically because people feel left out. So if an older staff person, either from a professional association or even from within the company, can take on a mentee, that they foster that kind of close working relationship, and each generation helps the other. So everybody benefits, and we're not segmented into generational silos.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I want to touch on something you mentioned earlier about how you do job spec adjustment when a client has a specific role that you need to fill. Do you do that quite often? Is it very often that they don't really know what they're asking for or looking for? Can you maybe elaborate more about your insights on your experience on having to do that for clients?
What happens when clients want to hire is they typically know what they're looking for. They're not necessarily professional writers, however, and you have to
Mm,
the candidate experience. What is it that the client needs to communicate to a candidate reading job specs so that the candidate will say, yes, this is for me. I can
right.
relate to this company, to the jobs, and you are describing me, and this looks like a perfect fit. Because just like candidates, actually, it's a parallel situation. Clients are too close to the specs, and candidates are too close to their resumes. That's why they need
Yeah.
because I ask those kinds of questions to draw out interesting aspects of the job that are challenges and opportunities, because you don't want all these job openings to sound the same. Every company has different needs and specific kind of client or candidate rather who's going to be a best fit. And by the same token, I say this all the time to candidates. The candidates who use AI or who repeat their job description in a resume, that's not a resume, that's a job description. And let's face it, if you're looking for IT people, marketing people, communications people, people who are in any field, they basically do the same job. So you don't
Mhm.
want people to come and look like mirror images of the job specs. I ask the candidate, what makes you special? What makes you unique? Why should I hire you? And your resume needs to reflect your accomplishments. Quantify and qualify. And give me what I like to call case stories that will be sticky in my brain.
Right. Are you seeing any specific industry that needs that a lot more, or are you just seeing that pretty common across the board of industries? I mean, refining the job spec and also the candidate in that specific industry needing to refine their resume.
For sure you see it in the tech world, because there are so many thousands of jobs in technology that require similar talent skills. What they will do with those skills once to get to the job, that is it a startup where you have to think about process and start to finish about what goes into that job day in and day one. Don't skip. It's very interesting. I know in Japan, the kids learn how to do origami as children.
Hmm.
And if you've ever seen books teaching people how to do origami, if they're Japanese kids, they skip certain sections because they already know how to do it.
Hmm.
Talking to American kids, don't skip, because I need to learn step by step by step how to do the origami.
Right.
Depends what's generic to your company, to your culture, to your field, that comes naturally to every single job that you have, and the required must-have steps that you will walk into the door knowing how to do them, versus this is our company and this is how we do things here, which might be different from another company. So you have to really think of, what are your needs? What are your expectations? What kind of talent do you need? Is everybody in the company an IT specialist? Is everybody a professional marketer? Or are you doing AI? And how are you using all of these tools? And what level of proficiency do you have your talent come in at?
Hmm. Are you seeing across all industries where this is what I've been able to pick up from talking to other recruiters and kind of just talking about people and hearing about the economy in general, right? What I'm hearing is there's a lot more applicants to each
Yes.
position. Is that what you're seeing across all industries as well?
What I'm seeing is that, again, think about demographics and different generations at work. The candidates who are, quote, expensive, they have the strategic and the hands-on abilities, they've been cut. And
Mm-hmm.
these are supremely talented individuals. So what I've been telling them is put out a shingle, be a consultant, be a fractional executive. Because what's interesting is when all those jobs go away, there's still gaps and there's still work that needs to be done in the company. So companies that have let go a lot of PR people, what do they then do? They hire consultants or freelancers to come and do the work that went out the door with the talent who was doing it. So likewise, what I've seen over time is, sadly, the writing abilities of candidates overall has gone down.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not as curious. They don't read. They don't follow the news. And the ingrained skills that they might have had by being continuous readers isn't necessarily there. And they are not doing well on writing tests. So here I'm saying you have to raise the bar to my candidates, you need to keep reading so that you understand what business writing is all about, so that you can educate your workforce about topics that there's no typos in your content, for example. And then also, if you are a very sophisticated subject matter expert, remember who is your audience, who you're trying to reach, and at what level of expertise are they coming in. And often people who are very, very experienced will feel, well, I don't want to do content for less sophisticated people. So you always have to know, who is your audience? Who am I trying to reach? Are they experienced users? Are they new to the marketplace? Are they reinventing themselves? Like all these tools that are AI focused, you have to learn how to use them and ask yourself, is this an effective tool? And some AI tools, when I read that, there's no human spirit, there's no soul, there's no dynamic that makes the reader say, I can relate to you. It's kind of flat. Again, flat.
Right.
So you have to really think, who is your customer? Who is your attendance? Who are your readers, to make sure that you reach out to the person who's going to be appropriate? You want them reading your content.
I think you bring up a really great point, the human element, right? Because right now, I feel like a lot of people who are using AI are almost trying to rely on it too much. They're taking away the critical thinking, their
Hmm.
critical thinking. They're having it, work for them and not use it as a tool to supplement what they're trying to do. Right. And it really is a moment of kind of, it's a testing period, right? AI is still very much in its infancy stage. But I view it as really just, again, another tool to be able to get you. It's almost a standard nowadays. It doesn't even really get you ahead of people, right? Because everyone's using AI, like you mentioned. But you still need to integrate and implement the human aspect to your content, to your resume, whatever it may be. But the AI shouldn't completely replace whatever it is that you're trying to do. It shouldn't take away that critical thinking. Um,
Yes.
right? It sounds like you would agree. Are you seeing a lot more people or positions that require AI tools, though, that being said, with
There's
more AI
definitely an
experience?
increase in need of people with AI skills. So while I'm not saying adopt it wholeheartedly without being critical thinkers and users when you're looking at it, so does your content look generic?
Hmm.
Likewise, by the same point, you need to test it, and you need to make sure that your information is authentic, because when you're getting all this stuff, has it been authentically proved to be factually true? And you
Right.
don't know that. And what's also interesting, if you're cutting and pasting content, where is your brain getting a workout so the muscles in your brain literally can understand process? And if all you're doing is cutting and pasting, you're not learning anything. And that's what I have a very large concern about, because, when you cut and paste, you're not using the same critical thinking skills. Like, for example, I am a person who still believes in writing notes, physically writing notes. And people
Hmm.
say, "Oh, Lynn, how dare you do that?" I said, "I learn more because the physical act of writing imprints content in my brain. And when you're typing on a keyboard, it's not the same." Also, for example, when I'm learning material as a storyteller, or if I'm doing a presentation, and I just did a presentation last week, and it was just, Lynn, just review your key points before you do the presentation. I hand wrote them.
Hmm.
And then when I went to the presentation, I was flying. I didn't need any notes. It just came out because I had gone through that physical prep. Now, there might be some people who say, "Oh, Lynn, you're very old fashioned." And I do what works for me. And everybody has to have their own discussion with their brain and their heart and ask themselves, how do I function best?
Right. There is a difference, though. I think most humans can agree that there is a different um there's a different segmentation of information when you are putting pen to paper, right?
Hmm.
You can work faster, you can have more words spit out when you're typing, sure, but when you're trying to elaborate or have some talking points, there is a difference in writing things down, and that's how it's always been. That's why people journal, right? And all that stuff. So um yeah, I now, are you seeing, when you're seeing all these AI resumes, do you feel like these people who are submitting these resumes are not reviewing them at all? Is that why you're making these points?
Well, they've listened to too many podcasts about AI, I think, because I look at them and they're generic, they're
Mm,
boring. And
yeah.
here's basically what I do. I tell all my candidates, what did you do that made a difference?
Mhm.
Put some numbers in there, metrics to be able to gauge your effectiveness. So if your sales went up 20%, if you introduced new products, if you were able to reorganize your department and become more effective and more efficient, if you were able to introduce writing classes to make your content more easily understandable and put the human touch to it, your audience will relate more to it. Because again, if it's generic, no one's going to remember. That's the
Right,
problem.
right.
And if you're not going to remember, it's not going to be sticky in the brain. Here, you know what? I'll give you another example. I use props. Think of theater and people who use props when they do presentations. I have a collection of ducks. I bring my toys with me. Here's my carrot. And I bring my toys with me, and people, Lynn, what are you doing? What's your toy? What'd you bring today?
Yeah.
And we have fun together because it's not what they're expecting.
Right, right. Yeah, no, like I said, like I mentioned earlier, you are able to associate the brain with some sort of thing, whether that's I mean, from the toy, you're giving the element of surprise, right? And that's an emotion that you're invoking when you're presenting or you're showing something to someone, or whether it's a client or a or a potential candidate. So it's all it sounds like you are very much enforcing the human touch into not just your business, but really other people's careers. And I think that's very critical. So that's great. I want to zoom out real quick and talk a little bit more about your business.
Yes.
How has that evolved? What has been, successful? Obviously, you running a successful business for 40 years now. So I do also want to ask, what are some challenges now in today's economy, and how you would like to overcome those challenges for your business yourself?
It's a very good question because things ebb and flow depending on the cycle of business. The key thing is always to reinvent yourself, your skill sets, see what is trending, how I can add value, be it with workshops, seminars. I do a lot of interactive workshops. For example, I involve my audience, I give them tips about how to do a presentation, create a resume, interviewing tips, and I work one on one or small groups with candidates to do that. So those different kind of services we've added over the years. The other thing is you have to look at where the businesses are in terms of business cycle and
Mm,
life cycle overall. So what now there's a big interest in uh, the environment and keeping the planet, and what are we doing to be responsible about recycling and all the issues that are coming up about plastic, things like that. And how do we be careful stewards of the environment? There's always clearly anything related to healthcare is always changing as new tools and technologies are being invented. Here's the other thing. Because I've worked with so many different demographics and I study demography. So the next big group coming up are going to be the retiring baby boomers. There is going to
mhm,
be a whole new level of products and services aging to a huge demographic that will soon be retiring. Some will work part-time, some will pass on their knowledge to other generations. Housing will change. There's going to be a huge need for assisted living, nursing facilities, different kinds of shared living. I even read about a community that's women only, that they're having special housing in these kinds of areas. So there's going to be a lot of innovation in terms of an aging population. And because the boomers upset everything before us, because when they went to nursery school and elementary school, high school, college, we upset the apple cart because we were so many coming in at the same time. So that's going to be the next big hump in terms of growth. And I'm certainly looking for those opportunities. I participated in a symposium for women over 70 last week, and it was a very vibrant organization and meeting, and my chance to do storytelling with them as well. So that's going to be a new upcoming growth pattern in our economy. And certainly anything, again, related to healthcare, as we think about what are good, ethical, safe tools or healing practices that we can help with people and less on prescription medication. But again, I'm not saying get rid of prescription medications if they're working. I mean, I think of all the vaccines that I had as a child, and my brother had German measles. My mother practically, put the two of us, my sister and myself and my brother, together so we could get German measles. I didn't. So, we went to camp and we had to leave camp because it was still during the incubation period.
Yeah.
So, like those, I mean, I remember as a kid having, all the vaccines with the stickers on our back and stuff like that. They saved lives. And when I think about what's going, I've been to Africa, Ethiopia, I've been to the former Soviet Union. I've done a lot of work internationally also, that we do great work in helping people save lives. And that is a very powerful way to give back.
Hmm.
And there's going to be definitely ways that we do humanitarian support, because that's part of who I am as well, because I grew up the daughter of immigrants. So there's lots and lots of ways that people can give back, come up with new products and services. And it's a matter of timing and opportunity to put them in, have people who are in startup mode and see that there's an opportunity to make a difference.
So you're looking to shift sort of your energy and for where you can provide your services into these potential markets. It sounds like you're adapting to those future businesses that sounds like it's a need in the world and the economy. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I do that personally anyways. You know? So I went to Ethiopia and did humanitarian work, and I came back and raised
That's
thousands
great.
of dollars on their behalf. So
Yeah.
for me, what's interesting is I don't distinguish what do I do as a human being and what I do as LH&A, because they
Mm.
overlap.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing a new sense of mission for younger talent. And when I listen to them, I go, you know what? It's just like you guys when I was your age. So there's not that much that really differentiates us. And what's clearly is there's always going to be an evolving basket of needs and opportunities for every generation to contribute. And I hire people at all levels. I'll give you an example. I hire a lot of freelancers, and I have freelancers who are in Florida, South Carolina, in Kansas, and my longest lasting freelancer has been doing freelance writing for one of my clients. Guess how many years she's been doing freelance work nonstop?
10, 15 years? More than that?
18.
Wow.
18 years nonstop. And what makes it amazing is she was doing virtual work remotely 18
18
years
years
ago
ago. Wow.
before the word remote even existed.
Yeah. That's amazing. So, sorry, who is she to you? She's your direct freelancer, or she works for a different company that you help connect?
My client and my candidate, they're both. So my
Mm.
client's been working with me years ago, 18 years ago. They wanted to hire somebody, and they said, you know what? We don't have room in our office. We don't
Mm-hmm.
have room for a desk or a chair. So
Mm-hmm.
go find somebody. Okay. And I
Yeah.
found this woman in West Virginia. And
Wow.
she has been working nonstop for my client for 18 years. And she is a superb writer. And she has been the go-to person, and people in the agency fight to have her do work on their behalf.
Awesome. That's amazing. I want to talk back about AI. You know,
Yes.
AI has obviously impacted all of us. Um, but there's not so many tools nowadays in addition to ChatGPT where it can be implemented in the business, at least not for most businesses. If you had a magic wand and you wanted to automate something, you wanted to implement AI into your workflow, what what would you like to be improved
Oh,
if you could?
please get rid of all the junk mail that I get. Oh, I'm so happy to do that. And then a process when they come in, and I'm doing my research right now. When I get candidate resumes, you see, it's really tricky because on the one hand, I talk about sticky in the brain. So when I get candidates' resumes, I might look at it and go, you're a great candidate. I don't have any job for you right now. Let's stay in touch. So even if I look at it once or twice, I'm not guaranteeing I'm going to remember it 5 years from now, but at least to be able to say to people, great credentials, love to work with you, register with our firm, send me your materials. Because when people register, they go through different steps. So if there was a way to automate it and still keep it human, I
Hmm.
would be very eager to see how those tools are, because we're doing a lot of personalizing our outreach to our candidates when we follow up with them. So we always look at their resumes. We ask them to answer our questions so that we can save their profiles and encourage them to stay in touch with us long term. So it's a combination of the human factor and tools and technology that will make it simpler. Get rid of the junk for sure. Because I all these emails, they don't put their last names, they don't put the names of their companies, they don't put their websites. How should I trust you?
Right. I mean, I think you speak for most of us professionals here when you say get rid of the junk mail, please. You know, it's just that extra step of having to click delete or mark as read or, dragging it to the spam box. It's just a waste of our time. And not to mention all of the spam calls that we get nowadays. Like, thank God that, iPhone has that feature where you can silence unknown numbers, but still, it's just an additional swipe that you have to do and it adds up and it's just so just frustrating, right, having to deal with that because we already have so many other 10 million other things that we need to do. um, how are you doing the other part right now? Are you just manually um, filing all of the resumes that you receive and uploading that into a CRM maybe or a database? How are you doing that right now?
When we get candidates who are viable, certainly we encourage them to answer questions, send me samples of their work. We have a baseline of questions,
Mm-hmm.
even including a question, what makes you happy at work? Because I want to know what's going to get them excited when they get out of bed in the morning. And they help me give me insights about who the candidate is. So we ask them to do that. We add them to our newsletters so they get our weekly updates about jobs. And then if they see something that speaks to them, we ask them to follow up with us. Sometimes we do have to reach out to the same candidate 3 or more times because we see something in their background that says, I am the candidate of choice. So we have to assume the human touch again, because sometimes candidates, they get so many calls and they blur out. And sometimes we have to stand out to them, say, I really care about you. I really want to be able to work with you. And we're very trustworthy. And actually, candidates then say to us, you ask us questions, you help me, you coach me in ways that other recruiters don't. And it's because we care about our people and we want them to do well, because then we look good too. So, it's in everybody's best interest.
It's a win-win situation. Yeah. Well, great. Lynn, unfortunately, we're out of time, but thank you so much for this conversation. It's been a really inspiring one for me. Your passion for people, and your humor, even your heart-centered recruiting really, stands out in an industry where often feels, transactional, right? So thank you for sharing all that you've shared with us and being on our show today. For anyone who wants to reach out to you to LHA and learn more about your work, what you do, whether you're going to be in Africa this week or Ethiopia next week, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Well, I just so happen to have some. Yes, I have the right one. So here is my business card, and here's my QR code. So it's
Amazing.
Lynn Hazan and Associates. Now, again, you could do it English, French, or Hebrew. I answer to all of them because in French, the H is silent. And
Okay.
Lynn at lhazen.com or Lynn at lhazan.com. It's fun to have different languages. And again, I always recommend, by the way, for any candidate, use your QR code on your back of your business cards. Business cards are still worth taking with you when you go to industry events. So you never know if you're going to win a raffle prize. I do.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Lynn. Thanks for your time and hope to stay in touch with you and speak to you soon.
More to come. Thank you so much.
Thanks.